Are you stuck with solos that never really sound like jazz no matter what you try? I struggled with this as well until I discovered this simple exercise that fixed my rhythm and phrasing and made my solos finally feel like jazz. So in this video, I'll show you the exercise and exactly how you can use it to give your solos the rhythm and feel that's missing. And the surprising part is that you probably already know the exercise. I'm talking about soloing using only the notes in each chord. So for a C7 that would be root, 3rd, 5th and 7th, what is also called chord tone soloing. But most students practice this so that they sound very mechanical, like this. But here's the surprising part. Limiting yourself to just chord tones actually helps you focus on rhythm and phrasing, and that's where it starts to sound like music. Now let me show you how to build this, starting with just 2 shapes on the first 4 bars of a jazz blues. We're going to build this from the ground up and stay on the first 4 bars of a jazz blues in C, so you only need 2 chords for this. C7, then F7 and then back to C7. For this exercise, don't move around the neck, stay in one position so that the lines can connect. I'll show you why later in the video. Here's a simple 1-octave C7 arpeggio, and of course we also need one for F7, that would be this one in the same area of the neck. Now let's put them over the chords to hear how they sound in the song, keeping it as simple as possible. This is of course the boring version, just a technical exercise, but it is useful. The point of this step is just, can you find and play the chord tones and stay in time without getting lost? Now you might wonder why we are only using 1-octave arpeggios, and that's because this is all you really need to start making music, and it keeps everything simple and close enough that your lines can connect. Next, let's open up what you can do with these simple arpeggios. Here are 3 quick levels to make it easy to improvise with the chord tones. You already played the basic ascending arpeggios, but not all melodies move up. Play the arpeggio descending so that your ear starts to hear that option as well. And this is easier than you think, and you can practice it like this to connect it to the music. Next, start on the 3rd of each chord instead of on the root. For C7, that could be a line like this. And then for F7, you get this. This is the first step toward making it sound like a line instead of a pattern, and the 3rd is a very strong note in the chord. Check this out. Final exercise that will make you much more free. Don't just practice arpeggios, create simple licks and move them from chord to chord to get flexible. Take a simple C7 line like this one and then see how it is to move this to F7, which is really just sort of mapping 1, 3, 5 and 7 to that chord. So if I have, then I'm really just thinking, okay, 3, 1 or root, and then back to the 3, 5 and 7. If I do that for the F7, then I'm going to get 3, root, and then 3, 5, 7. And then you get an exercise like this. So now you've got the raw material, but if you stop here, it will still sound like an exercise. In the next step, I'm going to show you how to use these same 4 notes to make phrases that connect so that you're playing a solo with a story, not just a bunch of licks. Let's start improvising with just 4 notes. Okay, this is the part that most people skip. You can play the arpeggios, but how do you make it sound like a solo instead of just a technical exercise? Now the goal is actually simple. Stop thinking arpeggio and start thinking phrase. And the easiest way to do that is to use one small idea and then develop it. Here's the rule. Pick a very short motif, nothing more than 2 to 4 notes, and repeat it. But move it with the chords, like this simple motif on C7. Now we're only using chord tones, and you already saw how easy they are to move, so mapping the notes by just thinking 1, 3, 5, 7 on the next chord gives you this on the F7. Now listen to what happens when I take that same motif through the 4 bars of the blues, but notice how it doesn't really sound like a solo yet. This is still very much an exercise, so try changing the rhythm for each development. And that is really the most important rule here. If it starts to sound boring, don't ditch the motif, change one thing, the rhythm. That always works. Next is call response. This is one of the fastest ways to get that conversation feel in your solo, where one phrase asks a question and the next phrase answers. And here's the shortcut. Play a short call and then answer it with a variation that is sort of the opposite. So here's a small call on C7. And here's an easy response, same shape, just reversed by changing the direction of the last part. Now, of course, you can create answers in other ways as well, but this is simple and it works. Check out how this sounds, and in the next section, I'm going to show you some phrasing tips that you can also add. Notice what we didn't do. We didn't add more notes. We just made the notes sound like music. And the next section will show you how to take the exact same ideas and make them sound even more human with phrasing. Maybe the most important part of any style. So now you've got phrases, motif, call, response, but what makes a solo really great is often subtle details like dynamics, timing, or a well-placed grace note. And the nice part is, with only 4 notes, you can actually focus on these details without getting overwhelmed. Check out this phrase, which is maybe a bit boring like this. And this gets much more interesting and alive just by adding a bit of phrasing. And this is what you want to get into your playing, to not sound like a robot. The next example also highlights something else that you'll learn by working with this approach. Hear that part? I'm still on C7, but I'm already aiming for the F7 in bar 5. And that is a huge part of the jazz sound, connecting chords, not just jumping from shape to shape. Before we expand the arpeggios, keep this in mind. If you can't make 4 notes sound like music, adding more won't fix it. Jazz lives in the rhythm and phrasing, not in how many notes you play. Up to now we've used the 4-note version of the arpeggio. Now we'll open it up into the full arpeggio position so that you can create longer lines and connect chords more smoothly without jumping around the neck. Now this depends on how you play arpeggios as well, so use what you're familiar with. You might have other choices than mine, and that's not really important. And another point, this is about knowing the full position, so the root is not always the lowest note, similar to scale positions. Now for C7, you get this arpeggio. And for F7, you have this. The way I think about this is pretty simple. The full position is really just the 1-octave version with a few notes below and a few notes added above. So you're not memorizing new patterns, you're just expanding the same map that you already had. Now you can start creating lines like this with a bigger range. But having more notes isn't a win in itself. The win is knowing where to go when the chord changes, so your lines don't stop at every bar line. You want to flow through the progression like real jazz. Now that you got the full arpeggio shapes, connecting chords gets way easier. With the 1-octave version, sometimes it's impossible to make smooth transitions. Here's the skill you want. While you're playing over the chord that you're on, you're already aiming for a note in the next chord. So here's the one thing to focus on. Pick a target note. That's how your lines stop sounding like separate chunks. So if you're on C7, now while you're improvising with these arpeggio notes, then you also want to see the arpeggio of the next chord, F7. And then you want to play a line that ends on one of these notes, because that instantly makes everything flow. That could be something like this. And here, of course, the last part of the C7 line is really just designed to end on the A, the third of F7, giving you this. Applying this to our 4 bars makes everything flow much more naturally. Check it out. You get the exact same problem when you're playing chords. You can play the right chords all day and still not have any feel or rhythm, because the real goal is turning chord symbols into rhythm and movement, not just playing a chord grip on B1. Joe Pass had a great approach for chords that fixes this, and I break that down in this video, so check that out if you want to make your comping come alive. Learn jazz, make music.